I would like to take a moment before we get into today's main episode and to talk about my sponsor for the podcast. Podmatch is a new podcasting site dedicated to all podcasters. The platform helps hosts get connected with potential guests to appear on their show, as well as allow guests to find podcasts that will give them a chance to share their story. Podmatch offers many tools to help organize your page, from to-do lists to episode planning to potentially appearing on a leaderboard. Podmatch has it all. The best part, you have the potential to get paid. And who doesn't like to get paid from home? I like to. With an easy sign up, you can start connecting with podcasters and guests immediately. I have been a part of Podmatch since the beginning of May, and I have got to say that it was the best decision I've ever made because Podmatch helps your podcast grow. It helps you get connected with people that have very interesting, very compelling background stories that are just waiting for their story to be shared. So if you are a host or guest and would like to start building professional relationships, explore more opportunities, and have your story shared, I highly suggest that you sign up with Podmatch today by going to joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to start expanding your network in seconds. I would like to give another huge thank you to Podmatch for sponsoring this episode. Now on to our main episode, and again, you can sign up at joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to begin your podcasting journey today. Hello everyone, welcome to the Lethal Venom Podcast. This is the show where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth, no lies told. And today I have Miss Emma Lyons. She is a trauma-informed healer and founder of the Trauma Matrix, where she helps women break up with a shame voice that's been sabotaging their success, relationships, and visibility for years. After studying law and international human rights, Emma turned away from a life path that looked good on paper but felt like slow death, and spent the next decade deep in the healing world. Despite all the therapy, yoga, mindset work, and energy practices, she still found herself stuck in loops of self erasure, burnout, and invisibility. Until she uncovered the deeper truth, she's internalized a narcissistic system of control and it was running her from the inside out. Today, Emma helps high-functioning, heart-led women dismantle that inner narcissist, the shame voice that humiliates, controls, and impersonates them so they can reclaim clarity, power, and nervous system freedom. So I want to thank Emma for joining me today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Noah. Thanks for having me. Great to have this conversation.
So if you could just explain a little bit about what you do and a little bit about your backstory.
Okay. Well, I kind of struggled all my life. I had, depression and a really powerful shaming voice. And it wasn't, I did all the therapy, I did all the things, and it was like just moving, trying to do feng shui on the furniture and when the house is on fire, because I would keep kind of reverting back. And what I realized is that when I realized that my mom has covert narcissistic traits and a lot of things kind of slotted into place for me. And then I realized that I had internalized that narcissistic voice, and that was the shaming voice that I had inside of me. That was basically, and we're told when it comes to narcissists out there that we want to go no distance, that go no contact with them, you don't listen to them. But when it comes to this inner voice, we're told to take them for tea, we're told them to empathize with it, understand where it comes from, and really, sit in your shame. And I've spent a long number of years doing that, and it didn't get me very far. The only thing that's really worked for me is creating this separation, recognizing that that voice isn't me, recognizing that it's a narcissist, that it's not someone trying to help me. It's like a covert narcissistic mother, the mother that pretends she wants to help you, that she has your best interest at heart, but really she just wants to protect her own anxiety. Like my mother, she told me that I couldn't be a singer, that I couldn't be a yoga teacher. That wasn't about my good. That was about her own feelings of anxiety. It wasn't about my benefit. So I think there's this real lie that the inner critic is helping you and it can be integrated. And I've never been able to do that. And all of my attempts to integrate it have failed. And now with my new strategy, it's really working for people and for myself, because recognizing that that voice isn't you and just saying no to it, just like you would to a narcissist, is a really powerful way to take back your power. We're not integrating shame. We're recognizing that shame is not you and that it's an implant from this narcissistic culture that we're all living in.
So could you give like a deeper dive into what inner narcissist is and how it is sabotaging even the most self-aware people?
Okay, well, I think even I was very self-aware and I was doing all the work on myself and I could write a book about what was wrong with me and I was constantly trying to fix myself. And all of that is kind of playing into this narcissistic entity because it's like, oh, there's something wrong with you. You've got to fix yourself. You're bad. So we're constantly, when you've got that self-awareness, you couldn't be constantly trying to heal from something, trying to solve something, trying to fix something that you see as wrong and trying to make it right. But all it does every time is it just feeds this voice that says there's something wrong with you, or this feeling of shame that says there is something wrong with you. And that shaming voice, by the way, it's very different from the guilting voice. The guilt says you've done something wrong, but the shame voice says you are wrong, you are bad, and that's something that is unfixable. You can't fix if you are inherently defective, nothing that you do can resolve that. So my story is that I realized that was what was going on with me, and I help people now break up with that shame so that it doesn't control and affect them anymore.
So why is it so many high achieving women still feel stuck, invisible, burnt out, even after doing years of therapy and mindset work?
Because so much of the therapy and work that we do around shame, it's all about integrating this voice. It's kind of looking, it's like we're in a cage. We're in a cage of narcissism and shame. And this is trying to, the structures like psychology and most therapy and healing out there, they're all kind of trying to integrate it. They're working within this system of control, this system of shame. So they're not seeing that there's a way outside of it. Most thinkers, when it comes to shame in Western societies anyway, they consider it a natural and normal part of what it is to be human. And for thinkers like Brene Brown, for example, says that if you don't have a little bit of shame, that you're basically a psychopath. And that's something that is shared by many psychologists and therapists, that you need a little bit of shame. But I feel I'm really proved it with myself and with people that I've worked with that shame is always toxic because you either internalize the shame and become self-destructive to yourself and start drinking, or this can lead to suicidal ideation and that kind of thing. Or you project it out, you find someone, a scapegoat who you can project that shame on so that you don't have to deal with it yourself. So it is always toxic, but the fact that it's natural, the fact that it's a normalized part of our society is very different from the truth that it's natural to what it is to be human. Because indigenous communities, before religion came along, for example, in Ireland, before the Catholicism came, people had a very different culture it wasn't shame based. Shame was an idea that came particularly with religion in Western cultures and with Christianity, this idea of sin. You're basically a sinner from when you're born. So this idea of original sin, it basically teaches you, and it has the template across cultures that there's something wrong with you, which is the definition of shame. So this is why so many people think shame is normal, because it is so normalized and it is so deeply entrenched in our culture.
You talk about breaking up with the inner narcissist. Can you describe that process, what that process actually looks like?
Well, first of all, you've got to recognize that that inner narcissist isn't you. And that's not something, if you go to therapy and stuff, they try to get you to integrate that voice, try to empathize that voice. And that voice, the steps that I would talk about, yeah, you need to understand where that inner narcissist came from. So that's useful. You recognize that you integrated it, you got it from your mother, your father, your family, and you internalize that feeling of being invisible within the family or being feeling shamed. Because what we do is we kind of believe that if I shame myself first, then I'll feel less pain when I'm shamed from the outside. That's the kind of the psychology that's going on that I've uncovered. So we get in there first by shaming ourselves or by letting that inner voice shame ourselves. So we recognize that it's not you, that it's not your higher power, that it's not your wisdom, because A lot of people get caught up there. But if the voice is shaming you, it's not your inner wisdom. It's not your higher power. Your higher power, your higher self, it's not going to shame you, or your intuition, whatever you want to call it. It's not going to be shaming you. It might say, no, maybe you could have done this better. Maybe that didn't go quite as according to plan. Maybe we could do it better the next time. But it's not going to shame you and say you're bad because you didn't do that right and you're stupid. But that's the first thing. Recognize that it's there, recognize where it come from, but then you don't stay there. You've got to, when it comes up, you say no to it. Basically, you do not interact, you don't question, you don't try to fight or defend yourself. Just gray rocket. You don't, because every time you try to fight with it or engage with it, you actually give it strength. Or every time you dance to what it's telling you to do, you're actually just reinforcing that the power. And it can actually get quite malignant, that voice, that entity, this inner narcissist. It's the reason why people they commit the final act of self-erasure because the inner voice says, oh, you might as well not be here. There's no point. Without that, people, terrible things happen and they never take that step. So we've got to recognize that it's not you, that it's not serving you, that it's not trying to help you, that it's actually trying to kill you, that it's actually trying to keep you small, it's not benefiting you. And then when it comes up, when the voice comes up, you do not engage with it, you don't fight with it, you just carry on and do what it is that you want to do. That means you don't do the opposite of it. You don't, if it says to go right, you don't go left just for the sake of being contrary. You act from the place of what you really desire. You're not acting out of rebellion, because if you're rebelling against it, you're still being controlled by it. You've got to act out of what you really want, thrive doing what it is that you really want. That's the real key to breaking free. And that's the best way to kind of give the finger to this voice, to take your power back, to say that it doesn't have any, you have no control over me, and I'm in charge of myself, and I'm doing exactly what I love to do and to thrive because it's what I want.
How does childhood dynamics affect success later on in life?
Well, it really does, because within narcissistic and dysfunctional family systems, and most families are dysfunctional, to be honest. They've estimated, particularly in Western cultures, that about 70 to 80% of families are dysfunctional. So these could be, excuse me, children of alcoholics, or, narcissistic people, or any kind of level of dysfunction. And in dysfunctional family systems, you often have this system of control that it kind of emerges. You have the kind of leader. This could be the narcissist who tells people what to do. Then you have the scapegoat. And this is the person that kind of gets dumped all the shame that nobody wants to process, the family shame that gets passed down through the generations, the intergenerational trauma that nobody's recognized or done anything with. It just gets dumped on someone, and it's often the most sensitive, the quiet person. It all gets dumped on them. You become kind of the family landfill, if you like. So that's one role. Then you might also have the golden child. The golden child is the child that's kind of the favorite, and they get projected on, on that they have to do, they can do no wrong, basically. So everybody within this system, and then you have the enabler as well, who basically just supports what the narcissist or the kind of leader of the system says. So basically, within all of these roles are basically driven by shame. People don't get to be themselves, and then they go into adulthood still carrying that template. And this is why lots of scapegoats, they end up with carrying a lot of shame into adulthood and struggling a lot. They're the ones that go to therapy to try to figure it out, because if you're a scapegoat, your life isn't designed to be functional. You're designed to kind of be the dumping ground for everyone else's stuff. So scapegoats really struggle within that system. And even the golden child, they can struggle with a sense of identity, because they never really get to explore who they are and what they really want, beyond playing out this role of the favorite and kind of being cookie, a cookie cutter of what the narcissist wants, or the idealized ideal for that child to become. So they might not ever get to be who they want to be, or even explore what that might look like, if that makes sense.
You've said visibility isn't a mindset issue, it's a trauma response. Can you unpack that?
Yeah, well, when you are invisible, another role within dysfunctional families is the invisible child. So if you were brought up feeling that being visible within the family structure, be that you have to be invisible to be safe, maybe the narcissist would abuse you either emotionally or physically, or they would hit you if you had a physically aggressive parent or somebody in the household. You learn to be invisible as a way of staying safe. So that becomes an internalized pattern. So when you're an adult and that's no longer valid, your nervous system is still wired for that. So this is why it's so difficult for people who have kind of taken that into them to step up and be visible. It's not just a mindset thing. It's your whole body is like, it is just not safe. If I step out and be invisible, I will be attacked. And it's really visceral. It's not enough to just say, oh, you're going to be fine. It's like a visceral thing that happens in the body, and the nervous system actually reacts to that. So it's uh it's a very real thing that can affect how people show up in the world and keep people very small and out of their power for their whole lives.
So why is it so hard for women to feel safe receiving wealth or visibility?
Well, for the same reason, because of all this internalized shame and these visibility blocks as well that I've just spoken about. But if you have internalized shame that there's something wrong with me, that I'm defective, you can constantly, a couple of things can happen. You can constantly be in a state of feeling like you have to prove that I'm good enough. And this is the hustle culture. It says you've got to pride, you got to keep going, you got to do more in order to be enough. And this inner narcissist, I'm calling it the inner critic, it's never satisfied by that because it's always like, oh, you could have, even if you get the A, it's like you could have done better. It's always find a way to kind of pull you down. So this is what leads people to burnout, feeling like they have to keep doing more and more in order to be enough. And it's all driven by this shame that we've internalized. So we keep trying to prove that we're enough when we're carrying this belief that there's something wrong with me. So there's a massive conflict between those two things. We're kind of pulling ourselves in two different directions.
So what made you realize that self-sabotage wasn't a mindset issue?
When the mindset work didn't work, it was like I said before, it's like your feng shui and the furniture and the house is on fire. It worked for a little while. It was like a short term, maybe it could provide a little bit of relief. But then I noticed with myself and with people that I worked with, people would kind of revert back. They might feel some relief in the moment, but then revert back to their previous ways because it's not just about affirmations. It's about the whole body learning that it's safe to do something new, to try to do something new, and that we'll still be safe, that we won't be attacked, that something bad won't happen if we take a different action. Because this shame, like I mentioned before, there's this kind of belief that we have around shame that if I just shame myself enough, then I'll be protected from shame. And it doesn't make any sense, but it kind of emotionally, we were like, if I get myself first, then nobody else is going to get me. So we really want to take that apart if we want to succeed. And we want to succeed, but without burning ourselves out or killing ourselves in the process. There needs to be, and there is a way to get aligned success where we actually thrive doing what we love, and we do it from a place of ease rather than a place of struggle and fighting and hustling. That's a very kind of masculine way of doing things, and it can work for some people. But I think there's a lot of shame around those strategies. This is why people say, "Oh, if you failed, it's your fault. If you're poor, it's your fault. If you're too fat, if you're too ugly, if you've got a big nose, it's your fault. It's your fault that you're not successful." And this is something that we see a lot in, so-called meritocratic cultures. People just assume that if you haven't succeeded, that it means that there's something wrong with you. And then we internalize that as well. We internalize that voice, which makes it harder and harder for us to actually thrive or succeed, we feel like we have to keep beating ourselves up with this shame in order to feel like we get to be enough.
So what's the real reason we overgive or undercharge?
Well, I think it's the same. It's the same reason from what I was just sharing. It's again this idea like flight when you get triggered by your trauma from childhood, you go into flight, fright, flight, fright, flight, and fawn. Fawn is like you go, oh, you try to please. That's people pleasing. So we try to please the people in order to get what we want, in order to feel like we're enough. And it doesn't work because you end up just, you end up just giving more and more, and a lot of people will just keep taking more and more. And so that's where the overgiving and the undercharging comes from. We feel like we need to give great value in order to feel like we're valued and that we get to give enough. We feel like we have to give more and more, if that makes sense.
So I know there's probably someone out there that's my listeners. I'm hopefully that all this information she's been giving out's helpful, but what's one step that someone can take today, or what's some advice you can give for them to start breaking toxic patterns?
Well, I think the first thing, I mean, I've talked a little bit before, recognizing that that internal voice is not you, recognizing that the more you exorcise this voice, the more you release it from yourself or separate yourself from it, the more immune you become to external sources of shame. Because think about it, if I come up to you now and I say, I hate your orange jumper, you're not going to be offended by that. You're just going to think I'm crazy. We only get shamed when we agree with the person, when we're like, oh my God, I'm wearing an orange jumper. What's wrong with it? You know? So the more you free yourself of this narcissistic voice, the more immune you are to narcissistic shame sources out there in the world. So that is the place to start. You don't need to change other people. You can change yourself. And that first step is recognizing that you've got some kind of shame-based voice going inside you. And I also have a free tool for people if people are interested. It's 5 signs it's time to break up with your inner narcissist, which is what I would recommend if people are, if people are inspired by what I'm sharing. That's what I would recommend as your next step. That's at tinyurl.com/not today narc. So you can find it there.
Well, Emma, I appreciate you so much for joining me today and sharing some helpful advice with me. Feel free, I'll give you the floor to promote anything else. I know you just promoted your website as well as the guide, the five signs you need to break up with your inner narcissist. So, do you have any social medias you'd like for people to also check out as well?
Yeah, on Instagram and TikTok, I am trauma.matrix. And I also have a Substack, which, if people are interested in kind of going further into the philosophy of it and about the shame based, you can find me there. It's traumamatrix dot substack.com.
And as I always say, I'll put all of her links in the description box below, as well as her social media and website, so it's all in one place for you to easily find her. For me, all my socials will be down there as well. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Lethal Venom Podcast, Facebook, it's Noah's Podcast, as well as YouTube. The podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts from: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Pandora, as well as and also YouTube. Um, Elma, I appreciate you so much for joining me today, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with my listeners. I really have appreciated it.
Thanks so much, Noah.